Hiya, folks. It is your friendly neighborhood real estate lawyer here, and I just wanted to do a bit of an update to a session that I did a while back where I was discussing what happens and how you determine whether or not you should be breaching your agreement, your new build agreement, or closing, and the math behind that decision. For those of you who are interested, you can search out my videos on that subject. They are all located on my YouTube channel. Um, but today I want to address the functional way that most builders are actually dealing with breach. Because it's all well and good to say to someone you have the option of closing or you don't, and here's the math behind that decision. It's an entirely different thing to tell people what will happen after they have chosen to breach. And most importantly, what actually we are seeing in the field and how builders are actually reacting. So the first thing I would tell you is that almost everyone who comes to our desk and requests us to deal with the builder wants us to write, everyone wants us to write a letter to the builder, wants us to describe the hardship that they're facing, which fundamentally usually is the price is just too high. And then wants us to try to deal with the builder. And everyone says, I'm prepared to walk away from the deposit. Well, P.S., the builder already has the deposit. And then they say to you often, well, okay, I also am ready to give $10,000, $20,000 more. But the builders, just as a matter of course, it's not that you shouldn't write that letter. Every lawyer should be sending out those letters because every client should be determined and should understand that they've made the absolute best effort to try to deal with the issue that is at hand, which is their eventual breach. But I'm here to tell you that the practical reality is that all builders are basically, they have a stamp now. They literally have a stamp which basically says denied because they're getting so many of these requests. There's rumor that some new build constructions are like 40% of people are not closing, 30, 40%. So when you are looking at numbers like that, that's the people who aren't closing, not the people who are writing letters. So when you get just hundreds of letters, you need some form of system. And so the builder basically, as a matter of course, now has adopted a strategy that I think, I haven't heard this from the builders, but I'm noticing it. The builders are saying no. They're saying no as a matter of course. They're not even listening to what people are writing anymore. They don't care. Because for them, figuring out who's real and who's not would be an endless task. And as a result, their position is, we'll deal with the reality after you crash into the wall. And this is something that I have to deliver to clients all the time and express to them so that they understand that this is the reality that they face. That we can write any letters you want, but the builders, particularly because from their vantage point, they're just being deluged with these emails, are insisting that people crash into the wall and breach their contract before they'll even talk to people about ways that it can be fixed or negotiated. Because after all, you're not going to take an individual letter, read it for contents, and then try to discern if this person is real or not, or what. It's evident in the pudding. We're going to insist everyone close. Those people that cannot, we'll figure out where we go. At least that's my sense of what's going on at the builder's office. So what happens after that? You're forced to crash into the wall, which, by the way, for a lot of people is very difficult because a lot of the people who come to our office are very well put together, financially acute people, and generally people who have their stuff together usually don't try to do everything to avoid hitting a wall. And here I am telling them, you have to hit the wall. This is just part of the builder's strategy. Figure your way through it afterwards. That doesn't sit right, but it's the reality. If you're going to breach, you're going to hit that wall. And so then they ask, well, what happens after? Well, enough time has elapsed that I can probably give you a sense of what I think happens after. First, about 25% of people aren't sued. So I think that's about a right figure at this point. I mean, this is based on nothing, by the way. This is just based on pure conjecture and what I feel is happening based on me speaking to people, and this is my day job. But I'm just going to throw that number out there because it does seem right to me. About 25% of people aren't sued, and you're playing a game from the day of your breach for 2 years to ensure that ultimately you don't get sued. Because if you don't get sued in that 2-year period, you're scot-free. You've lost your deposit and no one can sue you and you're done. And about 25% of people are lucky. About 75% of people are not. And what not means does not necessarily mean a lawsuit. Generally, there's a couple of builders out there who send cure letters. And cure letters are, hey, you've breached, but we'll still give you 5 days to bring this back into order. So you get this like 10 days after closing, 15 days after closing. They send you a letter saying, hey, even though you've breached, even though we've preserved our rights, we're going to give you 5 days here to actually figure out if you want to actually make this deal happen. And I see that particular letter as an opportunity to negotiate. Do not let that email go to junk. I see that as the opportunity to call up a lawyer and say, look, we hit the wall. We showed you we were ready to breach. Because I find that when I call up lawyers at that point in the process and then make an offer and say, listen, I'll do this, but I need this price off, sometimes there's a willingness to listen and bring it to their clients, if nothing else. Of course, then builders are allowed to evoke their ultimate rights, which is to sue. And the thing about a lawsuit is that the builders don't do it themselves. So the big builder law firms are Brady's and Harris Schaefer and God knows what. These companies do not go ahead and sue people by themselves. I mean, there's a couple that do, but not many. Instead, they hire litigators. And the thing about litigators is that litigators negotiate for a living. And what that means is that whether or not they begin with a lawsuit or a letter saying they will sue you, those people will listen to negotiation. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not going to be nice about it, and they may not agree. I mean, it may be the case that the builder just says, go forward and let's get our judgment. But generally, when you're dealing with a litigator, when you're dealing with someone who's going to court, then there is a willingness to listen. And in fact, the court process also has baked in components where things like pretrial are there to see if, in fact, you can resolve matters between the parties. That is to say, litigation does not mean an absolute judgment against you. There is a process beforehand, but that process does involve getting a good litigator involved. A litigator who, by the way, is not going to attest that you did not do an actionable wrong, because you did. You did an actionable wrong. You had a contract. You didn't close the contract. Clearly, there's an actionable wrong. But what the litigator is going to do is they're going to contest the damages. They're going to say, hey, this expert report is wrong. We believe that you didn't do your calculations right here. And they're going to muddy the waters sufficiently that there's a need to talk between counsel such that negotiation can take place. In other words, the negotiation that you are coming to me as a conveyancer lawyer for is usually not something that the builders, are ready to engage with because you haven't even touched the wall. But that negotiation is something that builders are showing a willingness to engage in, either pre or post litigation, but through the litigation process. And it's critical that we explain this to our clients, or if you're a client watching this, that you understand this metric, because of course litigation is messy, litigation is unpredictable, and you're not in the driver's seat. And so for a lot of people, particularly those people who have good control over their lives, their financial directions, and everything else, this is a position that they're very uncomfortable with and they're not used to. Still, it's worthwhile pointing out that this is the way it is playing out based on the hundreds of files that I've now seen in the office where ultimately people have chosen to breach and how this has played out. So I figured I'd make this video and just let you guys know what was going on there. And, if you found it interesting, if you found it useful, appreciate it. And that's it. That's all I have to say about this. So guys, let's continue on in the great world of real estate, and I'll see you all on the other side.